All right, thanks. So, by the way, I just wanted to say Lens Protocol is so awesome. Thanks, Nader, for giving that talk. I'm really sorry that the slides didn't work, but everyone should definitely check it out, learn about it, find Nader. So I'm Doug Petkanics. I'm the founder of Livepeer, the world's open video infrastructure and the video streaming platform for Web3. Some fans here. This talk is actually not about Livepeer. This talk is some alpha for you all. This is a blueprint for how we can collectively build Web3's missing killer social application. Something that I think is really important, and I think something that we're on the cusp of seeing. Hopefully there's no slides up there. I prepared some great slides, but I don't want to deal with the flashing, blinking thing. So I've got my talk here, and we'll just kind of do it live and interactively. Cool. So I think, we're all here in Colombia. We're at DevCon. We know that Ethereum's purpose is to kind of enable improvements in the world beyond just finance. And I think the opportunity to make an impact in non-financial use cases is one of the things that Vitalik and the foundation care deeply about. And I think that social media is one of those areas that's really ripe for impact. I think social media and it falling victim to the sort of advertising-based attention economy business models in Web 2 have led to a lot of the problems and the ills in society. And I think Web 3 offers a lot of promises for how we're going to address those things through platforms that are owned by the creators and the users themselves, novel monetization mechanisms that mean we don't need to resort to attention economy and advertising, will just result in kind of more fair, more equitable, kind of better media applications than what we have today. But I think that we have not yet seen these promises be fulfilled in killer applications. We've seen a lot of people begin to try, and I think we are going to see them now, and I want to kind of recommend a path for how we get there. So first, a quick little history on where we've been. Maybe some of you have seen sort of the, what I'll call like social attempts V1 in blockchain. Has anyone here ever used some of the apps Steemit? Anyone? Couple hands on Steemit. Yeah. Peepeth, which was like the Web3 Twitter attempt. Yep. The Pepo app or the Peepo app, it was like the first TikTok type clone. So these were really early attempts at Web3 social, and for various reasons, either the infrastructure might not have been there for them to be cost-effective, seamless experiences, or maybe they created compelling platforms. I think Steemit, there's a lot to learn from. It's kind of like a Web3 Reddit. It was pretty compelling, but it ended up, due to the incentives, leading into sort of a Steemit token pumping echo chamber more than kind of a breakout mainstream success. So there's some iteration required there. And so now, fast forward to 2022, we actually have these really interesting social platforms that make it easy for developers to begin building. Things like Lens that you just heard about, Farcaster, Orbis, DeSo. Developers can not focus on the social plumbing, but can begin focusing on their user experience and get data and portable users kind of out of the box. That's really powerful. But where are we in this space? We're seeing everyone experiment. We're seeing people create clones of, what does Web3 Twitter look like? What does Web3 YouTube look like? Even the great app LensTube that we just saw, I think it's a great start, but it's sort of a YouTube-ish type experience. And I think that the killer breakout app from Web3 is not going to just be a clone. It's not going to be just Twitch, but on Web3 infrastructure. It's not going to be YouTube, but on Web3 infrastructure. That's not compelling enough for users, mainstream users, millions of them, to come over and switch because we don't offer the distribution. I think what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves, what has Web3 uniquely enabled that's really powerful? And how do we leverage that in social and media use cases, creator use cases, to tap into that superpower, to create experiences that are new, that are unique, that are better. And because those experiences are better, they will attract the millions of users that lead to the next kind of breakout movements in Web3. And so let's ask, what are the kind of key disruptions that Web3 have brought so far? I think there's 4 of them. One is permissionless crowdfunding, right? The second is kind of global permissionless access to a digital-first financial infrastructure. I think the third is sort of provable digital ownership over digital assets, right? And the fourth, I think, is kind of collective global coordination. And so if you use the kind of acronym terms for these are ICOs, DeFi, NFTs, and DAOs, right? And these have really caught fire. They've begun to cross over and attract mainstream attention in financial and speculative use cases. They've encouraged waves of innovation. But it's interesting, all of these innovations have occurred in sort of the digital first online world, cyberspace, if you will. They've had less impact in sort of the physical meat space that we all live in. You know, the example is, an NFT makes a lot of sense for a digital asset like a digital piece of art or collectible or a digital song, but it makes less sense kind of representing your home and transferring your home to someone else via an NFT, right? And so there's this digital world that exists on the internet that this whole community is interacting in, and all these kind of metaverse environments are being built around. And the good news is this world is growing at a tremendous rate. I think we've seen a lot of stats in terms of developer adoption, user adoption. We see how fast DevCon is growing. We see the brain drain of talent coming into this space. And so what I would say is the killer kind of social apps are probably going to build for these digital first communities, this digital first world, and we should take advantage of these sort of 4 breakout impacts and think about how to use them in order to enable new innovations when it comes to social media, creator applications, media applications. Cool. So what are some of the, as we think about building the killer app, how might we solve problems that exist in this digital first world? I think there's an interesting kind of idea when it comes to how you build a social network and how you bootstrap it, called come for the tool, stay for the network. There's a blog post by Chris Dixon, an investor in Silicon Valley, about this, and it said that it's really hard to bootstrap a social application, right? If you launch LensTube, you're not going to get millions of users just going to that to upload video. How do you get those first users and build up a content base? And the idea is, first you build a tool to solve a real problem. And so some examples from the Web2 social world. One is Instagram. It started as an app called Bourbon, and even the first iteration of Instagram was not a social network. It was just a tool to quickly apply cool filters on your photos. And then people wanted to share those filters. They began to tweet them out, or those photos began to tweet them out. And then Instagram was able to build a social network where you could follow your friends and users and see their photos. And the rest of the story there is history. Another example, one of my favorite apps is called Strava. It's a fitness app. It's a tool. It's a fitness tracker. It tracks your runs, your bike rides. It shows you your stats. But it becomes more powerful as you want to share those to your friends. They can comment, interact. You can plan runs, rides, et cetera. And I think it's the most positive social network on the planet where everyone's supportive of one another. Another example, even TikTok started as Musical.ly, a tool to lip sync to your favorite applications and share your favorite songs and share them on the internet. And they still haven't even pressed too hard on the social graph, but they have a huge opportunity to, obviously. So if you want to use this approach, and I recommend it, what you want to do is you want to find a problem that exists in this cyberspace, in this Web3 space, solve that problem around media and content in a way that you can then later think about networking it as you solve those tools. So what are some problems that exist today in this Web3 world? I think one of them is DAOs and communities and projects, all these digital first kind of coordinated entities. They have no kind of safe place to kind of release and arrange and curate and distribute their content from, right? So much of the content that DAOs create is through video. It's video calls, it's community calls, it's communicating their missions and whatnot. And then what do? They're streaming their events. What do? They just kind of push it into YouTube, into a YouTube channel. They maybe try and post some of it on their website. They stream it through Twitter. But we know that can be demonetized. We know that, or deplatformed. We know it can be demonetized. It's subject to the search. Their communities can't find them. I think there is a real problem where DAOs don't have a trustworthy home to organize and distribute their content. The second one is, I think, content and curation and moderation services within Web3 social are missing. So a lot of the examples that we just saw, the lens tubes, et cetera, they just throw content onto the homepage, and anything you upload gets thrown onto the homepage. But no one's focusing on great curation and moderation to surface the most powerful content for those communities. And people are thinking too late about moderation and making sure that harmful content or content that's not going to help you grow doesn't get kind of put in front of the user in their first experience, because that's going to be terrible for retention. And so I think there's a huge role and opportunity for moderation in these platforms. And then the third problem is I think there's still no great discovery platform for high quality Web3 centric content. So how do people discover the newest and most interesting things right now? It's so fragmented. They're in Telegram groups, they're in Discord chats, they're on crypto Twitter. But there's no, even the Web3 media is just so fragmented in what it covers and what it talks about, because the people that are interested in what's happening in US regulation in crypto are totally different than the people that are interested in maybe what's happening in terms of the latest DAO proposals. And so, what are these discovery platforms where people can actually see the latest, the greatest content and media being created about this space? And again, remember, this space is growing tremendously, and there's more and more people interested in it, to the point where I think it will ultimately eventually become the internet, the way that the internet itself was a niche back in the mid to late 90s, but now the internet is just everything. And so all of these problems may feel small now to this community, but they're going to grow and affect everyone. So recognizing these problems, I think there's a few specific opportunities for applications that have a chance to become a killer breakout Web3 app today. I think the first one is to build a Web3 Zoom, right? I think right now, all these projects, all these DAOs communities are using Zoom in order to conduct all of their calls. And I think that it's not serving them that well. That content is not being archived onto their platforms. The identity systems are pretty messed up in corporate. There's a great app called Huddle01, which is taking this head on. It is a kind of an open communication platform for video conferences, but it's Web3 native, so you log in with your wallet. You could be anonymous. You could use your PFP as your identity. You can stream these calls through Livepeer. You can archive them onto decentralized storage networks. You can make that content available to your communities. So I think that's a great tool that DAOs would love to adopt, and there's lots of kind of problem space there to solve for, that any individual DAO could adopt, but you could see how as more and more do, more and more content gets built up. So I think that leads me to kind of the second opportunity, which is as all that content gets built up, I alluded to this, there's an opportunity to build a Web3 native kind of video CMS or content management system. How can a DAO organize a calendar of all of their upcoming events and calls? How can it display all the content in a well-organized way that when their community members arrive on their website, they can access it, they can see it, they can learn, they can be educated, et cetera. What do people do now? They send people off to a YouTube channel. And I don't think that's the best experience for educating, engaging, retaining your community. So if someone builds a content management system, sort of the video WordPress for DAOs, I think you will have a lot of early users, early customers, right? And then as that content kind of gets built up, I think that's when you really have the opportunity to network it. And I think that leads me to sort of the third opportunity, which is to focus on curation and maybe a curation DAO. So what would it mean to form a DAO that actually just focuses on curating the best content according to a specific mission? Maybe your mission is the best news and happenings in this digital-first Web3 world today, right? And your DAO's sole purpose is to curate that content from kind of the open portable data that we're seeing across Lens, Farcaster, Orbis, and independent Web3 platforms. Surface that, curate that, and all of a sudden now this content becomes interesting to people across communities. And again, if they were using your tool within their community, maybe you have opportunity for network effects. Maybe they're logging in with their Web3 wallets. Maybe they're building reputation, carrying their identity as they engage and comment on all this content across platforms. And this seems like a sort of viable path to actually creating something that's unique and different to a YouTube, but reaches that same level of impact within this community. So I think when you put these pieces together, what do? I think you start with the tool. It's sort of the content CMS for DAOs combined with maybe a Web3 native Zoom. I think you enable value-add curation on top of that content. Curation DAO is a whole separate talk, but I think there's opportunity there. I think you layer in sort of the Web3 social and network effects through kind of wallet-based login and interacting with the content using your Web3 identity. And then you network this together. So, the tool is useful in one DAO, but you expose the content to people across all communities. And then finally, that gives you the opportunity to expand to the long tail of creators, maybe beyond the DAOs themselves. Maybe the individual creators want to use this platform just to upload this instead of YouTube, because your Web3-centric audience is more valuable to them than the distribution they may get through YouTube's algorithms. And that's when you've made it, you have something unique, something different. And that's pretty exciting. And I think the pieces are in place to build that now. So I'm hoping we see it in the next 6 months or so. Lastly, this is just one blueprint, but I think there needs to be a lot of creativity, a lot of vision, a lot of innovation. I encourage people to experiment with this stuff, to try things, to put it out there, to get the early users, because that's what's going to enable the lightning in a bottle, breakout, killer Web3 social app. And I think that has the opportunity to be the catalyst for the next big, 3 or 4 letter acronym in crypto that catalyzes the next, millions of users, or maybe even 1 billion users to come into this space. So we're thinking about these things at Livepeer every day. We're down to jam on it. Come find us, talk to us, and join our Discord. You can find us on the web at livepeer.org or at Livepeer on Twitter. All right, thank you very much.